Michael Aastrup Jensen from Denmark. You are dealing with the Russian-Ukraine problem, to say it at least, and in which way?
Well, I've put forward a motion that would suspend Russia's voting rights here in this assembly for this entire year. And the reason why I did this was actually because I think that Russia has crossed a red line for me. A red line when you are putting in military forces on Crimea and then having supporting an illegal referendum which you got the results, as we all know, and then taking that land and putting into your own country. I think that's a red line for me.
But isn't there some kind of understanding to be taken here? Because the Russians are doing so, claiming that they are defending the rights of those people who want to belong to Russia. And at the second time also, to be honest, it was a joke that Ukraine got the Crimea. Or?
Well, you know the history. They got it, in back in 1954, I think it was. So it's been for
by Mr. Khrushchev.
Exactly, and it's been so for generations. And after the end of the Cold War, when Ukraine got its independence, we actually also had different treaties. One of the treaties was actually the Budapest Treaty, which stipulates that Ukraine lost all its nuclear weapons, but on the other hand, Russia, the US, Britain, and numerous other countries signed that they would help secure Ukraine's current border at that time. So actually, we on one hand have Russia saying, oh, we need to remove your nuclear weapons, but don't worry about the border. And then years afterwards, they say, well, now we don't have any nuclear weapons anymore. Now we can just move in and take the land back. And I feel that that's too far.
But what do you think the reaction of the Russian delegation will be?
To my motion, if it succeeds, well, I think they'll stay. We have two motions in play. We have the British one. My colleague Bob Walter from the British Conservatives has a motion to actually kick them out, in effect. Remove the credentials, and therefore they're not allowed into the building. I don't think that will succeed, but if it would succeed, I think the Russians would, leave before it actually got to a vote.
And you don't think they will do so if your motion is accepted?
No, I don't think so, because I've seen the different press releases from numerous Russian colleagues, and they all say, they call it a soft sanction, and they all started a spin machine in my way, in my words. So I think they will actually say, okay, we understand the sanction, but we'll live with it.
In which way do you think the Russian will behave in regarding the uprising situations in the eastern part of Ukraine at the moment?
Well, I'm very worried. I actually, see the reports that everybody is seeing out of the eastern Ukraine. We just saw yesterday that Donetsk, different government buildings were taken over
But taken back.
But taken back, thankfully. And thankfully, in my view, because we need to have stabilization. The Russians just are looking for an excuse to come in as so-called peacekeepers. And if that happens, it escalates to a level I can't anticipate where it will stop.
But Michael, don't we have to accept that those borders who were drawn even almost 200 years ago at the Vienna Congress, that they were drawn by emperors, kings, and generals, not taking into account that people had perhaps other wishes when it came to both belonging to a state or to believe to a certain religion and?
I understand the question, and a lot of borders have been drawn up on that in that effect. And if the Crimean people wanted even more self-rule, they actually had an autonomous region inside Ukraine, so they actually had home rule in effect. But if they wanted even more independent, they could have done that. They could have, gone to the central government in Kiev and said, we want even more independent power. And the Kiev central government at that time actually, said, we're willing to talk to you. But there wasn't any talks because at the same time the Russians came out of the bases on Crimea and attacked the Ukrainian military base, and then it just escalated out of nowhere.
But we are very strong in our way of reactions when it comes to Russia. We were not that strong when it came to Great Britain's interference in Northern Ireland. Where lies the difference?
Well, first of all, I think the history has changed somewhat, even though it's not that many years ago regarding Britain and Northern Ireland. But still, it has changed. And I think this organization, which have 47 member countries right now, is trying to look upon itself and saying, what is our job? And our job, in my view, should be that we upheld the international standards, but also international rules. And there is a rule. Stating quite clearly that one member country cannot go into another member country and just take whatever they want. So if Britain was doing that today, then I also believe that Britain would have been sanctioned. So time has changed.
Well, last question is concerning the possible reactions of NATO. Mm-hmm. NATO is more or less threatening, in a way, at least it looks like, from the point of Russia, to put enforcement next to the border of Russia in Ukraine. What's your opinion about that?
I'm a firm believer in NATO, and I've met numerous colleagues from the Baltics who are actually very happy that they are a member of NATO right now because they see it as a safeguarding their borders, against Russia.
But Ukraine isn't.
Ukraine isn't. I actually believe that the Ukrainian people should decide by themselves. If they want to be part of Europe, European Union, NATO, we should be opening the doors for them.
We're talking about putting arms forces and so on next to the border. Within a country which is a member.
And it is a very sensitive question, of course. I don't believe we should send in foreign forces in Ukraine, both from Russia's side and from the Western side. We should, get aid, economically aid to the Kiev central government, and then they should stabilize the situation without having any interference militarily from outside powers. And after that has stabilized, hopefully in a matter of days, weeks, somewhat, then they will have called for the new elections. We know they're going to take place very soon. And after that, whatever the government decides to be part of EU or whatever, we should follow that at that time.